Okay, so you basically not gonna go back there. That was a good question. It's too bad. Hmm. Okay, yes. Okay, great. Good, good, good. Okay, so I just won't go back to that section of the property. So this is a good question here. Glad you asked it. Psychedelics. Okay, so my view, yeah, great. That's great, man. Yeah, I've had kind of a lot of experience myself. About 10 years ago, when I really started meditating, I was using Ram Dass and reading his books, and I sort of adapted his philosophy where you take them and then you learn from them and then kind of let them go. I'm not against doing psychedelics, but I don't actually need them anymore. After probably because I have this enhancement now, I don't see myself in a situation where I would need them. Um, and yeah, there is like an element of fun, but for me, honestly, like it's not like going to a festival. Like anytime I would take like acid or something at like a festival, I would end up like in the woods somewhere, like trying to climb a tree or I don't know. Like when I do that stuff, um, or when I used to, it'd be by myself. And this is a great topic because if you've had an urge to take a psychedelic and not be distracted, okay, this is another um, sign of waking up to mystery student abilities that you used to have in a previous life. Because taking psychedelics and doing what I would do when I was like a teenager, seclude myself in a room, like a dark room. This is similar to initiation chambers. And you can go back and look at that and go, why was I doing that? Yeah, I'm not as familiar with Terence McKenna, but I'm very familiar with Ram Dass. I have many of his books, and that story about him with the Maharishi, or I forget the name of his guru exactly. I mean, I got a picture of him on my wall, but where Ram Dass gives him really strong acid, in India, and he said there's like virtually no effect on him. But there's a couple moments where he where he looked up and where at Ram Dass, and he kind of had a wild look in his eye, and he looked at Ram Dass and he said, "It's all inside." So and that was LSD, and LSD is derived from ergot, which is a mold, right? Ergot, I think, grows on wheat, you know, and then mushrooms, of course, are a fungus. These are naturally occurring things in the brain replicate. I mean, I'd have to pull out my notes for all the neurological, biopsychological stuff, but yeah. Let's see, yeah. I mean, it's such a great topic. I mean, you could do a whole lecture on this, but like, um, when I was young, I had this urge to trip by myself, man. I thought it was distraction when your friends would be like, definitely not at rock festivals. I did that two times later on, and both times they were fun later on after a couple hours passed. But the first, some guy came up to me. He had liquid, and only thing I had was Lunchables, and so he's like, well, you can put out a cracker, man. And so like he drops these hits, and I think about like 10 hits, and like he dropped like 7 hits on one cracker, and I ate that cracker, and I thought I was going to die. At one point that night, I was like, this is it. And which also leads to another study about sometimes I think that you can gain near-death experience connections just by thinking you're going to die. That's happened to me like 3 times. We're like, this is it. And one time I was in a car that flipped 3 times this way, and it landed right side, like, you know. But yeah, so the whole thing with psychedelics, I think they can be. I'm still not answering your question. I'm going to get to that right now. They can be useful, if they're done in a controlled environment and not at a, you know, concert in the desert. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I do normally I end up painting my face and doing all that kind of stuff when it's like hour number 5, but specifically for the first couple hours, that's that whole journey. It's like, it's fun once the journey is kind of like tapering off, and then you can have fun. But those first series of hours are really, it's meant to be in a controlled environment. And that is also, I think, what Ram Dass realized. And he saw that. Frank Zappa actually saw that too. I'm not going to get into that, but I shouldn't go in that direction. But Frank Zappa actually saw the dangers of psychedelics as well, and he wanted to get that out in an interesting way. So Ram Dass took it even further. He actually removed his regalia, his spiritual regalia, and he stopped dressing, and like he did in India, like wearing his beads, because it started to bother him. He started to, he didn't want to, especially from a lot of that imagery that was attached to the 60s and 70s. Like if you watch some of his stuff that he did in elderly care facilities in the 90s, or like right before he became paralyzed, that's some of his best stuff, because you can see him wearing regular clothes. And yeah, I'm sure we all like the skinny, long-haired Ram Dass better to some degree. It's more entertaining, but this is the stripped back Ram Dass that followed his own rules. And one of the most amazing things he said was he was in nobody special training. I'm always engaging in nobody special, removing more and more of your ego until who is Ram? Who was Richard Albert? He finally completely took out Richard Albert. I think it was didn't really happen until the 90s, and even further until he accepted that he was paralyzed. But what was that? Go back to the original question. Oh, okay, yeah. So there's a story about, I think if you're younger and you're having this urge to explore consciousness, and also not around people, like I always wondered, why do I want to leave my friends and go take this somewhere else, by myself a lot of the times? Well, I think it's compatible with that wanderer description. These people that are coming to find out they may have actually been a shaman in a past life. Like, what kind of, this is something that I did when I was 16. Because back when the internet was still new. I've since apologized, but I obtained one of my dad's credit cards. I was like 15 or 16, and I ordered a peyote button from like Mexico, or like it was like a peyote button, and it arrived in like a box with sand. Like I opened it up, and then there was, it was a peyote button, and then I took it, and it seemed very natural to cut it down, cut the peyote button down. Half of it I ate whole, and the other half I boiled down, dried out, and put it in capsules. What 15-year-old? That's normal 15-year-old behavior, and I don't want anybody to bother me when I ate you have to pull out the silk rivets. Then I did it a second time. I ordered. I tried ordering one from this farm. This is way back in the day. I'm in 42. That was 15. And I got an empty box sent to me from customs. Okay, they had taken out the peyote, and they had just stamped it with all these stamps, what have you, and it was like a warning, hey, don't do that again. You know, my dad got so pissed. But so the mescaline, the peyote, or whatever that active ingredient was. Yeah, that's a pretty good story. Uh, you know, it hadn't aged for 20 years because I really should have stuck it in some sand and um, had it growing in a tank for like another 10 years and would have been, but it was still active. There was still a lot of psychoactive uh, properties. And, you know, it definitely, it did, there was like 8 stages, you know, like each stage was really different. And there was one stage where I want to be careful, I don't like war story because I want to stick to the spiritual elements, but there was this like holographic. I mean, it was a Jim Morrison phase came out. Well, that time I was into that kind of stuff. That I was into the Doors, and I'm not saying I'm not now, but I listen to mainly jazz music, experimental. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it was like a giant Jim Morrison face. Like was like looked like a magic eye. It was just the size of my wall. Like, and then I walked in the park for a long time. There's another time where I was given some mushrooms at a festival, and then I took them, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to take this and go on a nature walk. This is going to be so great. Yeah, I mean, I took it. I was in a ditch. I was like hiding. I was like in a ditch, like this, like by a ravine, like for like 2 hours. You know. Yeah, man. Back in the '90s, we used to. Yeah, we used to. In the late '90s, there were still um, gel tabs, gel tabs that were made properly. Like you didn't really have to have a tester. You know, does it turn up purple or whatever? You don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. I mean, and the high school that I went to had the nickname the pharmacy, right? And we would pass gel tab. I mean, it's teenagers, you know, underneath the table. I remember I'd be sitting in math class, and like one guy would turn around, and he would show me his tongue, and he'd have like three black pyramid gels on his tongue, and then that was like, oh, whoa, man, he did 3. This is gonna be a crazy day for him. And there was no learning going on. As we just went to school and just partied, and we would leave. And I mean, I would like leave during lunch and go to Dairy Queen and come back with a milkshake. That when you came back with a Dairy Queen milkshake and you sat down in the class in like 8th grade, man, you were considered, wow, man, you just left the property and came back. That's what you did. You know, we ate gel tabs in the middle of the school day when we were in school, you know, during lunch. I remember one time I ate like just a 10 strip and just left school. And by the time I left school and I was just going to go home, I didn't even make it home. I made it about halfway home, and it got so strong. I went to my job, which was a pizza shop. Can't make this stuff up. It was a local pizza shop, and everybody in there was cool. And I went and sat in the bathroom. It was so strong. I went and sat in the bathroom of a pizza shop that was my job, and lived out this trip. You know, and then I just left. You know. But yeah, no, you can learn a lot. Yeah, I gotta be careful because I gotta keep this spiritual. I can't war story because then we're going into entertainment. Um, like last night, I've never done this live stuff before, and I really enjoy this idea. Like I should probably try to figure out a way to set something up at home where I can occasionally do something like this. But you know, it's funny. Like I'll make these videos. I've been doing this for about 2 years in my car because I don't want to talk about material that might like bother one of my neighbors or something that might be listening, that might be able to hear it. I live in a 4-unit apartment complex, so I do them from my car. I don't want to be like saying bad things about AI to somebody who uses a chat all day. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I want to make sure people can go. It's their choice to seek out the material, but What am I talking about? What was I? Yeah, and it's I wish Dave would have realized how easy it would have been to take some of the load off. He was. I wish he would have been able to relieve his stress enough to realize he didn't have to give everybody a this massive presentation with bullet points and slides and research all week. It would have been nice just to have a space where he could come with like fans, what have you, and just do this. Like have no expectations and just maybe some questions will come, maybe they won't. Um, this is just an idea. Obviously, like I have lights and things I could put up if I really wanted to pursue something like this, but um, he made it too hard on himself. That's what I would talk about in the letters. Like there should have been times where he just appeared and he's playing keyboard, doing characters, and then within an hour maybe something would come to him, and have no, spending all week making slides. So I don't know. I just think a format, yeah, like a Zoom call. That's what happened with the Raymond Moody thing. Worked out really well. That's a really good format. Not that we would need a moderator, but if there was something that became popular or enough for a small group of people, then then that's when you could have a moderator that would really be and Bev Adams. Bev Adams was classic. Sometimes she annoyed Dave a little bit, but you could have Bev Adams. I actually got to do a couple things, so I'm gonna jump back on probably in a couple hours to see if anybody's around. Yeah, but I'm gonna go ahead and I thank you, sir, especially for jumping on here, and I'm definitely gonna do this again, probably sometime this week, and then I'll figure out different ways where I can somehow make longer videos for people. And I really want to talk to people. You know what I mean? Like I really want to help people, especially with hospice matters, depression, mental health, things like that. And if you use a format like this, where you're just kind of sitting, then in a space, someone who might have felt nervous about asking a question, because I know how it is. Maybe after seeing something like this, they'll go, "Oh my gosh, I feel comfortable asking a question about my dying relative or something like that, or about where we go from here." Okay, thank you, sir. I will see you next time.